Good deal. Hello, everyone. My name is Herman. I'm a senior here. I study economics and history of science, originally from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So basically, we'll be here today just to answer any questions you have. We know the title of the event is Consider Harvard, so if you have any last-minute questions as you're applying, or if you have any questions at all about the application process in general, getting ready to approach it in the fall or anything like that, we are happy to answer any of those questions. So I'll go ahead and pass it along to Yesenia to introduce herself next.
Hey everyone, my name is Yesenia Ortiz. I'm currently a junior at the college. I'm originally from LA, and I'm majoring in the studies of women, gender, and sexuality.
Hi everyone, my name is Cyrus Montana. I'm a junior at the college studying government. I'm originally from Texas, and Ted will introduce himself too.
Yeah. Hi everybody, my name's Ted. I'm also a junior at the college. I'm studying sociology and government, and I'm originally from Boston, Massachusetts.
Good deal. So that's the four of us to talk to you today. So we'll just go ahead and get right started with the questions. I see one question that's asking about the importance of good recommendations from Maisha. Basically, she's asking how important are good recommendations, and does the profile of the recommender have an impact on the application? Let's say, for example, recommendations from VIPs. So does anyone, Ted, you want to answer that question?
Sure. So I guess in terms of recommendations from my personal experience, I enjoyed having teachers from my high school or people that I was involved with outside of my community who knew me very well, both personally as well as things that I'm interested in. They don't necessarily have to be your principal or anything like that, but if it's someone that can write very strongly on your behalf, I think you're putting yourself in a really good position.
Good deal. Anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, in my high school, it was you had to go to the counsel's office and have a form that you submitted, where basically like a resume that told them the things that you did outside of school, so like your extracurricular activities or whatever else you were doing. So I think maybe just giving them your resume, because what the way they see you in the classroom isn't what they see you doing outside of the classroom. So making sure they know that you're involved in things in your school or in your community that they may not know about, that they can also add to the recommendation letter that will put you in the best possible light, would also be helpful.
Yeah, and I would also add on to that, to not be afraid to approach teachers who taught difficult subjects. I myself asked my calculus teacher for a recommendation, and I didn't do so well when I first started taking calculus, but he was able to talk about how I came in during lunch for extra help and how I improved my grade throughout the year. And so I think, don't necessarily go for a teacher whose, class you aced easily, for example. They might be able to say great things, but also consider, teachers who can talk about your work ethic or your willingness to help your fellow students learn, those kinds of things. Awesome. And so we have another question here that's asking more about sort of extracurricular life. So asking, if you start an organization that begins after the application is due, such as in the spring, how can you include that? And that is asked by a user, Crolin484. So Cyrus, you want to go ahead and answer that?
Yeah, I mean, you still have to, so after you turn in your application, you still have to turn in your second semester grades. So I think continuing on with an extracurricular activity just shows your own personal intrinsic motivation for joining it. So if it's something you really care about, then it's something you'll continue doing. But the things that will go on the application are the things that you've done up to that point. But I would still, if it's something you really cared about, you wouldn't just stop, doing it after you applied. So that's just my thought.
Good deal. And also just to clarify, I know the question asked about starting an organization. And so if you're already working on that before the application is due and spending a lot of time on it, it can't hurt to go ahead and include. if it's something that you haven't started working on yet, then I'd just be hesitant because you haven't actually done that yet. But if you've already started work and the paperwork is due next semester or something like that, you can definitely indicate your plans to go ahead and start something like that, as long as you're just being truthful that this is something you haven't actually done yet, but it's something that you intend on doing. Good deal. And here we have another question about recommendations by Anicia Lee. And she's asking, if I submit more than 2 teacher recommendations, will you read all 3 of them or just a random 2? So Yesenia, you want to go ahead and answer that?
Sure. So it is 2 recommendations are required, and you are allowed to submit a third. And if it is submitted, then it will be read. It won't just be 2 random ones, but there are I believe some guidelines as to which recommendations they ask for. So they do ask for 1 teacher recommendation and then a recommendation from your counselor. And then the third recommendation, I believe, can come from other areas. So it could potentially be from a coach that you have been working with for a while, or a program mentor that you have been working with for a while. So if the third recommendation is submitted, then it will be looked at.
Good deal. And then moving on to our next question. This question is asking if we have any advice on approaching the more difficult aspects or portions of our life in our essays. Ted, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. So I guess one thing I enjoyed when I applied for like doing the written materials, that it really allowed you to like put that individualized aspect on your application. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be talking about difficult portions of your life. They can be, say, like great things that happen in your life, or even just like things such as like objects or like people that are in your life that have significant meaning to you. As long as you can write about it in a very like personalized way, and it can shed light on who you are, admissions officers would love to hear about it. It doesn't necessarily have to be like one big story about like adversity or anything like that. So don't like try narrowing an essay towards like that. There's a wide variety of options, and that part of the application gives you so much room to just write about something that's important to you.
If I could add on to that, I think that if you do decide to start expressing a little bit of that part, something that has impacted you in a way, or that has impacted you but can be a bit of a difficult subject for you to just think about or even talk about, if it is something that you want to share, to make sure that you are focusing in on how that experience has helped you grow, or how that experience has impacted you personally in the way you work or the way you present yourself or different things like that. So to use it more as a vehicle to show as how it's contributed to you as a person and you as a student now, and to try and present it in that light and in that way.
Definitely. Good. Do anyone else have anything to add? Good deal. If not, we'll move on to the next question by Stephanie Catozo, asking what's more valued, the quantity or quality of extracurriculars? And I'll go ahead and take this one. I think definitely we would say that we'd want to see the quality of what you're doing with these extracurriculars. I mean, you can write up a long list of, National Honor Society this, Key Club that, 2 different sports teams, but that doesn't tell us as much about what drove you to do those activities and what you gained from them and what you contributed. So I would definitely say that we value the quality of your activities more so than the quantity. If you do 2 things but you spend a significant amount of time doing them and really are passionate about them and obtain leadership positions in them, that definitely is more impressive to us than saying that you were a member of, say, 4 different organizations compared to 2 where you really took the reins and demonstrated your leadership ability. Do y'all have anything else to add?
I would add something. I guess in terms of extracurriculars, again, at least when I first thought about what extracurricular activities were when I applied, I thought they were mainly about things that I did outside of school but still connected to my school's community. Extracurricular activities really means doing things that, like anything that you do outside of the classroom, that can be family commitment or like jobs that you may have. Whatever you spend a significant amount of time on and like you have like a good amount of responsibility in, be sure to include that. It doesn't hurt.
Definitely. And I think to what you were saying, it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to your school. That's a very good point. Anything that you spend a significant amount of your time doing is something that we want to know about. I think a good example might be an after-school job. A lot of my friends worked as cashiers at our local grocery store, but even that says that you're dependable and responsible enough that your boss trusts you to show up on time and do your job professionally and well. So that's something that we would still want to know, that even at a young age you are responsible enough to hold down a part-time job after school, even if it's not necessarily academic or volunteering or something like that. Okay. We also have a question of where did it go? Sorry. So we have a question here about sort of fitting in by Dominique Reynoso. As a first-generation American, I worry about fitting in and finding the right place for school. Is Harvard a good place for first-generation students? What is the best way to convey to Harvard some of my story through my application? So I personally identify as a first-gen student. I don't know if we have any other folks on the panel who want to talk about their experience. Yeah, oh, okay, all four of us. Good deal. Here, Cyrus, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So I think, well, in terms of like how you can convey your experience as a first gen student when you're applying, I think the essay is a really great place to show that, and that the essay is supposed to be a personal essay, which is something admissions officers really push. So it's really just supposed to be about you and your individual experiences. So the challenges that you've gone through and how they've helped you grow as a person and overcoming those challenges to be the person you are today. That's a great place to talk about your personal experiences. And then also coming on campus, I think there's been an even greater push for support for first generation students. And I know Ted is the president or one of the leaders of the first generation student unions, which was started like maybe 3 years ago. And so Ted can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I guess talking about the experience being a first generation college student, it is a lot to handle really at first. In my experience, everything was very new, and it took a lot of adjusting and stuff. But because like the student community of first gen students here is very strong, we have like gained a lot of administrative support in order to like segue this transition for first gen students. And there's a lot of programming and a lot of people that are just really interested to hear about stories, being first gen, as well as like in any ways they can help within their college experience. So I think that's something that's like pretty cool here at Harvard.
And to add on to that, I think another area that I found really, really amazing support is, because I myself also identify as first gen, is other first gen upperclassmen. When I first came in, sophomores, juniors, seniors, that were super, super willing to share about their experience and talk to me about how they navigated different areas that I was just a little confused on or didn't know how to approach it. They were always super, super willing to answer any questions I had on that.
Definitely. Yeah, and adding on to that also, being able to connect with first generation tutors, which are sort of like RAs in our upperclassmen houses, or first generation faculty as well. There are a few folks that I met just during my freshman year who were sort of more in a position of authority at the college in terms of being staff, administrators, or faculty. And if they were aware that there were more first-gen students on campus, they were also great resources to turn to and sort of able to answer some of those logistical questions about how do I do this? I'm not used to doing this in a college setting. Awesome. And so now we'll move on to a question from Shaili Davaluru. Asking, is the optional essay really optional? Should I be trying to show something really eccentric about me in the essay, such as through a quirky roommate letter, or something more meaningful or profound? And so I think this is a pretty straightforward question to answer. The optional essay is definitely optional. It's not the kind of thing where we're testing your drive to do more work than you necessarily have to do or anything like that. The essay is a place for your voice to shine through and really if you have something more to say that hasn't been addressed through other aspects of the application, then that is definitely your space to take that and run with it. On the other hand, if you feel like your application, effectively showcases who you are or really effectively communicates what you want the admissions committee to know, then you are not in no way obligated to write it. I have friends who wrote the essay who got in. I have friends who didn't write the optional essay and still got in. So it's not a binding sort of a trick question or a trap, so to speak, in the application. Any of y'all have another perspective?
Yeah, I think Herman summed it up really well. If there's something that you feel is left, something really important in your life that's left out in the rest of the application, then definitely include it in the optional one. So, for example, I had a friend who was really into ballet,
Mm-hmm.
but that wasn't something she focused on the rest of her application. So the optional essay was a chance for her to write about how intensely, like, how much she loved ballet and how much it was a big part of her life.
Good deal. Awesome. And so now we'll move on to another question by Anasia Lee, asking if my parents went to college but didn't go to college in the U.S., am I considered a first-generation student? And this is a little bit more of a technical question in terms of how Harvard classifies things, but you actually would not be considered a first-generation student by that definition, to my understanding, because the way we look at first-gen students are students whose parents did not go to college and sort of didn't have the opportunity to obtain a bachelor's degree. I think if you're concerned that they didn't go to an American college and therefore don't have, knowledge to offer you about the American college system, even if they were able to sort of have successful post-college careers after that, when they came to America, you can definitely talk about that in maybe the essay part of your application or the additional information part of your application, but technically speaking, because your parents have obtained a college degree, we would not consider you a first-gen college student. Good deal. Okay, and moving on to the next question. So here we have a question regarding financial aid from Max Garcia, asking, how do I obtain financial aid? I come from a low-income household and I will have trouble paying for any college. I'm a first-gen student and I'm wondering if Harvard can help me with paying for school. So I work for the Harvard Financial Aid Initiative, and the sole mission of our subsect of the Admissions and Financial Aid Office is to make sure that everyone who gets into Harvard can come to Harvard regardless of their ability to pay. That's something we're very, very proud of. And that's done via the financial aid application that you'll submit at a similar, or a little bit after you submit your academic application. You'll fill out online forms called the CSS profile and the FAFSA profile, as well as submit your parents' tax returns. And the way we look at it is that we're 100% need-blinded admission. When we look at whether or not to admit you to the college, we don't care at all whether or not you have the ability to pay for school. We won't even pull that file until after we've made an admissions decision. And then we commit to paying 100% of your demonstrated need, meaning that we calculate an expected family contribution based on what we think is a fair amount to expect your parents to contribute. And then the rest we make up for with grants from the financial aid office. So that means no loans, which is something we're also really, really proud of. To give you a sense of what the income numbers look like, if your family makes less than $65,000 a year, there's no expected family contribution, meaning that your parents don't have to pay towards the cost of you attending Harvard, though there is a student contribution of between $2,000 to $4,000 a year, which students usually earn via summer employment or term time employment when they're on campus through part-time jobs. And then if your family makes between $65,000 to $150,000 a year, there's a sliding scale of 0 to 10% of your annual income. And then there's also financial aid available beyond $150,000 a year of annual income, and that's done on a case-by-case basis. So I don't have a formula to give there. But the bottom line is that we offer a lot of financial aid, and that we know that the majority of Americans can't afford to pay for Harvard without some kind of financial aid, and over 60% of our students here receive some kind of aid. I personally am on a lot of financial aid here, so I completely understand your concern, and am very happy to say that Harvard helps with financial aid. Anything that I left out? Nope. Good deal. All right, we can go through and find another question to answer. Okay. So we have a question from, where did it go? Okay. We have a question from Caitlin Rabinovitz asking, do you have any suggestions on how to approach the Harvard supplement? It's very open-ended, and I wasn't sure how to go about choosing a topic to write on. So we touched a little bit about this before, but Ted, do you want to take this one?
Yeah. So I get I know like that feeling when I was applying to Harvard. I really didn't know what to put in that part. But I did have an additional essay that I wrote for a scholarship that I was applying to, and I thought it was a really good essay, and it did shed light on a personal aspect of my life that I wanted admissions officers to look at. And so I uploaded it, and that served as my supplement. I guess like the point is that um, as Cyrus mentioned earlier, if there's like a part that like like in your written material or like your entire application that you didn't really hit on as much as you wanted to, or if you just want to talk about something completely new, as long as you wanted to have it reviewed and you want the admissions officers to know about it, that's the place you can put it.
Good deal. Anyone else have something to add?
I think it's to also remember that maybe something that seems completely normal to you is something that's actually an experience that's very, very different from a lot of other people and from potentially from a lot of other applicants that might make you stand out in the application pool. And so to just not, I think, take for granted a lot of the experiences that you've had that, again, for you might seem normal and might just seem like another part of your life, but to remember that those things are contributing to making part of who you are as a person, and that's what the admissions committee wants to get to know, and to not discount them and to not throw those ideas out as something that you can talk about in the essay that might not come out in the rest of the application.
Good deal. Okay, and next up we have a question from Gabrielle Gorman asking, what does Harvard do to ensure support on campus, emotionally and academically? So, Yesenia, you want to go ahead and take that?
Sure. So there are a couple of different resources on campus depending on what type of support you are looking for. In terms of academic support, there is the Bureau of Study Council, which offers a few different ways for students to try and approach their academics. There are different sessions on how to improve your reading skills if reading is something that you struggle with. There are ways to work on your study habits and your studying schedule and how to incorporate that into the way you operate as a student. So they're a really good resource in terms of academics. There is also, each student has an advisor. Depending on if you're a freshman or an upperclassman, it can either be just a general advisor or then an advisor specific to the things you want to study in the department that you want to study in that can also offer some really, really great insight on what classes to take and how the course load will end up working out and things like that. In terms of support for other aspects of life, there are a lot of different student I guess peer groups or peer-to-peer groups that offer support in terms of going in and having someone listen or going in and having someone to talk to about various issues. And there are several different ones on these that I could talk about for a while. But there are also centers. There is the Women's Center that has a bunch of resources and holds different events and also has interns that you can go in and talk to regarding accessing different resources and how to navigate those. There's also the Office of BGLTQ Student Life that, again, has interns that you can go in and speak to and can help offer advice on how to navigate either that aspect of life or different resources related to those things. And these are only a few of the resources that you can access on campus.
Good deal. Awesome. Cyrus or Ted, you guys want to add anything before we move on to the next question?
No, that was pretty. That was good.
Good deal. Awesome. So next we have a question from Leonardo Nerone asking the importance of class rank and grades. Cyrus, you want to go ahead and answer that?
Yeah. So the way Harvard does admissions is that really we're looking at three main things. First is your academics, so that's everything from grades, class rank, SAT scores, ACT scores. All of that is one category, but that's only one part of what the rest of the application or what the rest of the admissions officers are looking at. So on top of grades, there's also your personal qualities. So that comes out in your essays and the recommendation letters that teachers write about you. And so the kind of person you are and how you learn and how you, like, I guess, learn with other people. And then the third part they look at is your extracurricular activities, which we've mentioned before, but it's not just the things you do at school. So it's not just organizations, sports, whatever else, but it's also like if you have to go home early to take care of your siblings, if you have to work a job. One of my coworkers wrote about one of her extracurricular activities was taking care of their mom because she was really sick. So it's not just stuff inside of school, but outside of school. So grades and class rank are important in that they help build you up as a person to see whether you'd be able to do the work here. It's not like trying to test you against other people, but whether you as an individual will be able to come here and do the work.
Good deal. Thank you. And so for the next question, we have a question from Anush Mati asking, if I'm applying regular decision, will my grades in the second semester be considered? So Ted, you want to go ahead and answer that?
Yeah. So when you're applying regular, they do look at grades in your like the latter part of your senior year. It depends on like the way your school system works. So when I was in high school, I had 3 terms my senior year. Before I applied, they looked at the first 2 terms of my senior year, and then after I applied, they then asked for my updated transcript, just to keep an update on my performance academically. So they do check in on the entire year for your senior year. But again, depending on the way your school system works, it may fluctuate based on what they may see before they review your application, what they may see after deciding if you got accepted.
Good deal. So moral of the story is even if you get accepted, that is not licensed to just coast for the rest of senior year. we want to admit, driven people who are willing to keep up their good work. Good deal. And then next we have a question from Youssef Cesar asking, how much does the interview impact my application? So Yesenia, you want to go ahead and answer that?
Sure. So again, the interview is just a part of the larger application that the admissions committee is trying to look at to form a bigger picture of who you are as a student and also a person. So if you have the interview, that is another way for which the admissions committee to get to know you in a way that can't be reflected in the application. So being able to talk about the things that you're interested in, or being able to talk about whatever gets talked about in the interview, that is another area that can really help the admissions committee in building that bigger idea, building that bigger idea of who you are as a student and who you are as a person, and potentially what place you could have here at the college. But an aspect of the interviews is that it is very, very heavily based on the availability of alumni to conduct these interviews. So if you were not reached out to get an interview, that is just because there are not enough alumni who are the ones that conduct the interviews. There are not enough alumni available to do so. So if you do not have an interview, that will not be a detriment to your application. But if the interview happens, again, it will be another piece building to that larger application, and it can be a way to really enhance and build upon what other areas have been already provided in the application.
Good deal. Awesome. And so for our next question, we have a question from a username, Say What Now? The question, what kinds of awards should we list in our application, since there's a section for that on the Common App. Cyrus, you want to go ahead and answer that?
Yeah. So I think nationally recognized awards. So if you're, I don't know, a Gates Millennium Scholar, or you were on a sports team, or if you ran, like for example, I ran track, so like medals and awards from that. Whatever accomplishments you think are noteworthy for yourself, whether nationally or regionally or just even just in your high school, if there's something that you thought was meaningful and worthwhile for you, you should note it. But especially for like national awards, so like I think there's like an Intel prize, something that a lot of my friends talk about that I have nothing. I'm not science, so I don't know about it. But if there's anything you won nationally, then definitely put it on there. So for example, I did um, Science Olympiad, which was like regional and then national. So if you won awards at those competitions, then I would put that on there as well.
Good deal. Yeah, and to add on to that, national and international definitely want to include those because those are definitely on a big scale. I would actually say go ahead and include like local awards or something like that. I won a local essay contest about things we could do in our local North Carolina community to combat racism, and that was an issue that was really important to me. And so the winning the essay competition came with $1,000 grant that we could use to actually implement the project that we had outlined in our essay. So that was like, important to me. It was meaningful to me, but it was on the scale of our county in North Carolina. So anything that's meaningful to you that you've put work into and you feel like it's been recognized by an award, whether that's a mayor's award or something, an award in your religious congregation for volunteer service, anything like that, I would go ahead and include. I think the key thing is that you don't want some kind of achievement that you've accomplished to have meant something to you, and Harvard doesn't know about it because all we know about you is what you submit on the application. So unless you put it down on the application, the admissions committee won't know about it, and it won't factor into the decision. Good deal. Next, we have a question from Lucas Godoy, asking about recommendations, saying that he had an experience in an investment bank and his boss came to know him really well, and asking if it's a good idea to ask said boss to write an additional recommendation letter for him. So Yesenia, you want to go ahead and answer that?
Sure. So again, there is the option to submit a third recommendation, and for recommendations, it should definitely be coming from people that know you, that have gotten to know you in maybe a different context of academics, or even if it's within academics, just are able to contribute a different aspect of you than has already been reflected. And so I do believe that this can be submitted as the optional third recommendation, but it cannot count as the 2 recommendations that are requested.
Good deal. Yeah, definitely. So the motto here is that if a third recommendor can add something that your 2 teacher recommendation letters haven't added, it's go ahead and valuable to submit. We'll read them. I think up to 6 is the limit of how many letters we'll read. But don't just add extra letters just to say that you have all of these people who are willing to say nice things about you. Consider what this person will be able to add, what kind of information and perspective about you they'll be able to provide. So next we have a question from Max Garcia asking how students obtain an interview from Harvard and when those interviews are conducted. And so that's just a logistical question, so I'll go ahead and take that. So the way interviews work, it's not the applicant's responsibility to conduct or to schedule that interview. When you apply, Harvard will reach out to the alums in your area, and they will reach out to you to schedule an interview. And getting an interview isn't any kind of indication that you've sort of moved on to the next round of the admissions process or anything like that. We try to offer as many of our applicants as possible the opportunity to interview, and if you don't get an interview, that's not any kind of negative pre-indication on your application or anything like that. It just simply means that we didn't have enough alumni capacity in your area to interview you. So, just something to keep in mind there. Good deal. So, next question. Here's a question from Gabrielle Gorman asking if you win a big award after you submit your application, is there a way for me to update it? Ted, you want to take that one?
Yeah. So I think Cyrus kind of touched on this when we talked about extracurriculars before. But Harvard will look at whatever you've done up until you have submitted your application. If you're working on getting something like that results in you getting that award, then if it's something important to you, it should be included in your application to that point. But like by the time you receive an award like that such, your application will probably be reviewed already and whatnot. So trying to get everything included before the deadline is the big aim.
Good deal. Awesome. So next up, we have a question from Nicole Shum asking why we picked Harvard. Thought that'd be a nice one to answer. So I guess we can all just go through and give our sort of two-sentence spiel of why we picked Harvard. Yesenia, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. For me, it was definitely when I came to visit campus and started just interacting with students here. That was a huge, huge point for me, just being able to see people. First, it was definitely being able to see people that I could relate to, that were coming from a similar background for me, and it was really, really amazing getting to talk to these individuals that I could relate to, but that were also doing really, really wonderful things on campus and that were really enjoying a lot of the experiences and opportunities that I had on campus. And then also getting to see students that weren't like me, that were coming from very, very different backgrounds, and getting to meet so many different people and being able to have like great conversations with them about how they were all kind of in the same environment despite having come from very, very different places. So for me, it was the people is one of the things that swayed me to picking Harvard.
Good deal. Ted, you want to go next?
Yeah. So since I'm from Boston, I was pretty familiar with the campus itself. So that was one of the big driving factors. I didn't really consider coming to Harvard when I applied. It kind of just happened. But when I did get accepted, one thing or two things that really stuck out to me were the financial aid and just the general resources and opportunities the campus had to offer, both in terms of academic resources as well as like professional development types of resources. I felt like those things were very unique to Harvard, and so I was really excited to have the opportunity to be able to take advantage of those things.
Good deal. Cyrus?
Pretty much the same as what Yesenia and Ted have said. I didn't realize it. Well, for me, I didn't realize until after the fact, but Harvard is an extremely diverse place of people from all over the country and all over the world. So being able to learn from people coming from such different backgrounds from my own has been really great. But I chose Harvard because one, it was like so foreign to me, and like coming from Texas, most of the schools I was looking at were in Texas or in the South for the most part. And so coming to the Northeast was like I'll experience winter for the first time. I had friends that from my track team that came here, and so having connections already, and then also my Visitas experience really solidified that this is where I wanted to go, because our Visitas didn't happen for the class of 2017. So the week after, a couple of us still came. And I got to bond really well with the few people that were there. So like if I can get along with just the 6 or 7 people that I'm with right now, I can't wait to meet the other 1,600 whatever.
Good deal. Awesome. And so now we have a question from Caitlin Rabinovitz asking, do you look at which classes to the listed concentrations? I'm assuming you're talking about what you'd want to study here. For example, if we are interested in the government major, but we took more science classes than history, will that reflect badly on us? Before we answer this question, I just want to caveat that with the fact that you're not bound to concentrate in the disciplines that you indicate on your application. You actually don't even have to declare what you're going to study until the fall of your sophomore year. And even then, actually, about a third of students end up changing their concentration. So, I understand the concern of, you've taken certain classes, but you know what you want to study something else in college maybe. But I just want to caveat before we answer that you are not bound by the interests that you list on your application, and that you definitely are encouraged to explore the various disciplines available to you at Harvard and then make your decision based on the academic experiences you've had here. But Ted, do you want to answer the rest of the question?
Yeah. So I guess just like going off of that, what classes you take in high school are like no indication of like what you have to take in the future. So like I study sociology right now, and my high school had nothing to do with sociology, and so that didn't really like reflect badly upon me. They do look at what you took in high school in comparison to what's offered at your high school, just to see what degree you're challenging yourself based on what's available to you. So that's kind of the only probably one of the biggest lights that like what classes you take shed light on your academic performance and trajectory. But again, it doesn't have to indicate like what you're interested in. I took a lot of science classes. Like I took like 2 different AP science classes, and I want nothing to do with science in college, and that's okay. So those types of things happen.
Definitely. And to Ted's point, again, we want to see you taking advantage of the resources at your school. So if you want to major in government once you get here, but your school only offers math and science classes, we don't expect you to make these government political science classes appear out of thin air. We just want to see you taking advantage of what's available to you and making the most of it. Now, if there are tons of government classes available and you don't take a single one, and then you say you're passionate about government, we'll wonder where that's coming from if you're not like volunteering with campaigns on the side or getting involved with local elections or anything like that. But don't feel like what you take in high school is, predetermining what you take in college. We also have a question from the user, say what now? What does applying early really mean? Cyrus, you want to answer that?
Yeah, so the early application deadline was November 1st, some time ago. It already passed. But applying early means that everything on your application is ready to go for you. You're happy with the way things are. Your scores are perfect, or your scores are just where you want them to be. You have all the recommendation letters. Your entire application is done, but it gives you no benefit in applying early versus applying regular. The only difference is that the people apply early are ready to apply early. Whereas if you need more time to like maybe take another SAT score or get a recommendation letter from a teacher, then you would wait and apply regular. But I think a good piece of advice is to always just front load a lot of your work, whether you're applying early to a school or not, because when you apply early, it gives you a chance to ask teachers for recommendation letters early on, whereas if you wait, then maybe 10 or 20 people will be asking them for recommendation letters, and then they'll write pretty bad recommendation letters that aren't personalized. So whether you're applying early or not, I would say still do a lot of your work early, but in terms of sending in your application early versus regular, there's no benefit other than you're ready with your application early on versus maybe you need to put more things together for the regular application deadline, which is January 1st.
Good deal. So we'll take one more question before wrapping up. So we have a question. We've had multiple people ask this, asking how Harvard helps international students assimilate and what kinds of resources we offer for international students coming to Harvard from other countries. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think any of us on the panel are actually international students. So I can go ahead and answer this one. When you actually come for your first year, part of orientation, we do optional pre-orientation programs, and we actually have the Harvard, first year international program called FIP, which is actually sort of, a crash course for international students coming to Harvard, sort of help you learn a lot of the cultural cues or slang that you might not be aware of, or just sort of those kinds of things to help you assimilate, or not assimilate, but just sort of, feel more comfortable in your own skin interacting with students. We have a large international population on campus, so it's not like you'll be the only one who's not from America and doesn't know everything about American culture. And so after the pre-orientation program, we also have an international student organization and other resources on campus just to make sure that if you have any questions, you can go ahead and help. Outside of those formal programs, though, I do want to stress that just as a community, Harvard admits people who wants to learn more about the people around them and wants to form friendships. So, more than likely, you'll be able to get any questions you have answered by your roommates or friends that you make in lab or in class. So, outside of those formal structures, there's also a lot of informal ways that your fellow Harvard students can help you feel more comfortable on campus if you're very far from home. Okay, well, that was the last question. Thank you, everyone, for participating. We hope that we were able to answer your questions and make you feel a little bit more confident as you fill out your applications or think about applying to Harvard. Um, all of us are more than happy to answer questions through our respective programs that we work with through the admissions office. So if you go on Harvard's admissions website, or if you call our financial aid office or our admissions office, we are more than happy to continue answering your questions. But that's all the time we have for today. So thank you for conversing with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.